So we are recording.
Okay, thank you. So we have a copy of what we at least completed.
Yeah, Alexa gave us those in the packet.
On the
Of the
table.
things we
This is,
changed.
these are the changes that the board agreed with. At the
Okay,
last
okay,
meeting.
that's good. Okay.
So I don't necessarily need to compare them all with.
I can just really quickly go over what I remember. So I remember that we changed all of the words appraisal to evaluation.
Yep.
And then under process, we removed performance input and we removed that statement at the end in parentheses that were like notes, voluntary.
Yeah, that was there just.
As
Because
a
I knew it was
reminder.
debatable.
And I believe there were 5 occasions where appraisal was removed and
Right.
evaluation was put in. So those are the only notes that were in the minutes.
Run out of time.
So where would you like to start?
Well, I prepared what I would like to do. I don't know if you've got something similar, but kind of pick up from here.
And
I
I did in your packet as well, or on your computer, you'll have this. These were some of the questions that I had. Some of these may be most relevant to legal, or they may be things that you had as well. They were just, some of them were noted as questions, I think, by Trustee Hanley. So those were some of my thoughts.
These are things you heard us mention at the meeting or things you wanted to
These
say?
are concerns.
Okay,
And I think maybe not compliant with the law or with our personal policy, or I had sent this preliminary list to legal counsel.
okay. So unless you have something
Yeah,
different.
so we're starting with this same yellow marked up one that Alexa provided. right?
Yeah.
That's where we are. Are we starting from the top of that again, or are we just gonna?
Well,
Would you like
I've
to
got
do-
what I worked over.
Okay, I have no edits beyond what we did as a group.
And, I also worked on, some of this came from Hewlett Packard evals in my past. I proposed
This from you,
eval.
was this from you?
This has got my name.
Oh, okay.
This is what I did as,
These are your edits beyond what was just given to us.
and I guess I don't have them exactly what she had here. I did. I thought I don't know.
So
Lot-
are we going to mark,
We can continue right below the yellow with what I've done, I guess.
so are we going to mark up, or are you're gonna take a note?
I can take notes.
So are we then, is
I'm gonna-
Alexa then gonna be amending the yellow
I think it would be
highlighted one, because
easier to go.
you said you did not capture all the things she has here.
I think it'd be easier to put those things back in line, but I guess,
I think she has to change hers to make sure it matches
Yeah.
yours again.
but there's more changes in mine than what's left in this.
Okay.
I still,
Well, I'm
I
so
think,
concerned about documentation of what we're doing here.
I'm just gonna
This
get a
quick-
copy of them so everybody
Oh.
can get a copy to you, and then I have a couple copies to write on.
okay, we can mark up this one. What I would rather do, since these are suggestions I have, is basically strike out on mine what I've done, if you don't want them.
But then we're gonna have two versions.
For me, it would be easier just to start with this one and then
Yeah,
add. the
well, if you
things
want,
in.
there's gonna be a lot of things to mark
Okay.
up.
And I may not agree with all your
You
changes
may not,
anyway,
you
so
may not.
Yeah.
And I
we'll
may
make
come
a
up
new
with
one.
ideas.
Okay,
Um,
so are there changes in the beginning?
I didn't remember how we did it, but to me, it's still like fourth grade grammar to not capitalize something unless there's a name. You don't say
So you want-
dog catcher and capitalize dog catcher.
So is that specifically in reference to all the library directors?
It's like library director,
You
it's
want-
not a
and-
particular, if we said library director Eccles, then it would be capitalized.
I think it's a
And
position.
Board.
It's
you
not,
want-
it's unless
It's a
got a name.
job.
It's an official it's an official
Yeah, but it doesn't,
title of a
it
call.
doesn't get capitalized unless it's, you don't capitalize dog catcher.
If
If
you
you
don't,
didn't have kids in fourth grade, we have to
No,
use to
didn't know.
dogs.
well, like, that's good. Is there any consistency with other policies that we may, so that it's not an
Yeah.
anomaly again that stands out from the other policies?
I think consistently library director, like on the job description, it is all caps. On this way is how they did it, but like in the employment agreement, it's LD with capitals listed in as the heading.
It is uppercase?
It is.
First letter?
Well, I'm just saying it's incorrect grammar,
Okay,
because you don't say, you say the president, but if you say the president of the United States, you capitalize it. Or if you say President Biden, you capitalize it. You don't say dog catcher and capitalize it, dog catcher.
okay, well, I prefer uppercase on the first letter because it's a job,
I think.
it's a job title.
Go look it up. Anyway, I'll let it go. I'm just saying. So,
And if the rest of the board prefers lowercase, I can go with that. I don't
yeah,
care.
we can
But
talk.
I think because it's a job title,
Well, and you're referring to one person because there's only one library
There's no
director.
name with it.
Mhm.
If it would say direct library director, then it would be capitalized.
so you're okay with uppercase even though you don't like it?
I'll let it go.
Okay, done.
I'm just saying, I don't want us to look foolish,
I wanna
because
get-
I think it's fourth grade grammar.
Okay,
But,
well,
Board, you want the capital B or the lower B? or you're
I'll just
okay with
ignore
that?
the
Okay.
board decide, so.
oh, the board, I don't care if the board's upper level personally, but I think the library director should be uppercase.
But I'm telling you, it shouldn't be unless it has a name.
Well, you can call it BOD if that's common. I don't know if that's common or not, board of director, and BOT,
Yeah,
all uppercase.
Well, that's an acronym. That's different.
Okay. Is that not being used? Okay, well,
Anyway,
okay, my preference would be library director's uppercase and the board can be lowercase because.
yeah,
So, you're good with that? Okay, we can do it.
well, yeah, I'm just saying,
You'll give in
go
on
look
that?
it up. It's incorrect grammar.
Okay.
So basically, there's nothing else until you get below the yellow parts. I think my things are there.
Are you good with the preference and you're good with the objective?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm saying the only other things I had on mine, those, we did talk about that.
okay.
Under process, you can look at what I've got. I put
Okay.
the director instead of director. And put lowercase.
Okay, it was just, I guess it was, I'm not sure if these are good, well, so were the ones above it to provide this. I don't know if these are bullet
Those are
points,
bullet points.
but maybe I didn't turn my bullet pointer on there, but
Yeah.
should they be bullet points
No,
instead of, okay, I don't care either way. So you want sentences?
yeah, I think all this should be sentences.
Okay,
so I was gonna point out, I did include in your packet too, the staff self-evaluation. And we.
that's the staff,
referenced this.
yeah.
Yes, and so the 102 staff that we have fill this out. And we had talked a little bit about the last meeting that it's a little bit light for a director, but that it could be a form like this, similar to this. Or have
But
some-
what you were talking about is we're gonna fill out the evaluation form, the trustees fill out,
So-
your self-evaluation.
The current evaluation form, which we really haven't discussed, has at the end the areas of performance that can be more reviewing past goals, goals for the current year.
Yeah.
In the past, previous directors have actually filled out the forms and done a self-evaluation with the actual form that the trustees use.
that makes it easy on the board, because at least we don't have to figure out how, I'll just say, financial management is in some paragraph on the third page you provide, I have to fit it into our form. I probably prefer it.
I think it's good input to have before we start. I mean, if you,
I
Have
think
things.
it's fine that just said submits accomplishments and the self-evaluation to the board 30 days prior. I think that makes sense.
And what did you put in there? Let me see.
You
I
just
didn't
put
read-
it so that it was optional.
if the director, if so chooses, submits accomplishments, because in this, well, in whatever.
Well, what
we
you put
use,
may, how you put the director may submit, you did not. Is it optional, it's short?
This form, the very first section is results, objectives, which maybe would come from last year. And accomplishments, basically. So
I'm not sure where you're going.
this is the form I said, or I was proposing, I just handed out, but
Oh.
it includes, I would want her, if she chooses, for the director to fill out this list of accomplishments. Keep track
Oh,
of
you have
your
a
own
different
thing.
form? You have a different form.
I just handed it out.
Oh, I didn't read it yet. Okay.
Whatever form we use, that should be a normal thing. It's, if you choose, you give a list of things you've accomplished, instead of us having to try to.
Would they be mixed in already though to the submission where the director provides
They're right there.
input for each of the areas in the actual eval instead of a separate page? I mean, like
I think it should be a separate list of accomplishments, but if she wants to fill out the whole form and put things in,
what I mean is, do we want to just not even have that separate? I mean,
well, we can talk about that later, but I'm just saying that this, to me, this is normal. 40-some years of working, I always had to submit my accomplishments for the year,
And I usually fill out my own eval,
you know.
meaning I didn't put the numbers on it, but I put my own full verbiage in there and it would be edited by my boss if they disagreed or wanted to change it. And I didn't assign numbers or the actual scale. I'm just saying,
Well,
and that was in.
I don't know if we have to be specific, but
Okay.
just saying she submits, or the director submits accomplishments.
So how about the director may submit accomplishments? Oh, okay, are we gonna go to a self-evaluation? Oh, self-evaluation, what, using the performance evaluation form? Do we wanna say that?
I don't think we need to be that specific at
Okay.
this point, but I'm saying that's one option, is to fill out whatever evaluation form. It could be this thing. It's just a self-evaluation.
Okay, so how about we say the director may choose to submit accomplishments and a self-evaluation to the board, so forth, like you've got?
I put if so chooses,
Well, may, that makes it shorter. You okay with that?
but
If so chooses, it's easier to just say may. Submit, take the S off, submits.
okay,
I think the director may submit accomplishments and then I would
Yeah.
just take out the choose. The may
Okay.
is implying. So
I
just
just need to
the
make sure that it's the director that's
director
submitting the
may
accomplishment.
submit
Yeah.
accomplishment.
Yeah,
And
Um,
I think that's simpler.
and it's so, okay,
And a self-evaluation to the board chairman.
do we want to put submits slash, or I mean, sorry, submits accomplishments slash self-evaluation in case?
no, don't use slash.
All right. Okay, so we'll get to the self-evaluation. Okay, I'm okay, I guess. You good with that one?
We can
All right.
nail down what self-evaluate, but we haven't even.
Yeah, when we get to the form.
Got
we'll have
over the
it. Okay.
form, and I don't know.
Okay, next item on there,
Um,
the board. Is there anything changed in every side
the
stuff?
board trustees individually complete, and so I didn't have a color
Okay,
printer, so I put my changes in italics.
board trustees individually completed.
So after we get this back from the director, we go through and fill out the evaluation form prior to,
Okay, it's essentially the same thing, just
Exactly.
different wording from what I had.
the only difference is an and a the in the front.
I can live with it, I don't know.
And
So this is
lowercase.
a slight change from how typically boards do this.
This is,
I mean, and typically boards like to discuss item by item. I understand that this is kind of relating to some other options, but usually trustees try to reach a consensus or an agreement in ratings.
what we do, that's the next paragraph. We discuss, but I
Well,
think
just-
everybody should have a chance to on their own, think it out on their own without being influenced by the others. So that's what this is fill it out yourself, then come to the executive session and merge or strike out your stuff or say you're right, I shouldn't have said that, you know.
And you think typically you
Usually
see it done as a group from square one?
Well, and I don't know if you want to, but I mean, in
I don't
this
mind,
case, like how they've done it for 30 years, but
Do you mind if
usually
we
it's
ask?
more of a
Can you just,
discussion.
how do they do it?
I just to think we shouldn't have group think, we should individually have our own thoughts and write them down and come. And then once
And then
we come-
formulate a single board eval?
then we try to merge, and basically all we have to do to merge it is just, if you think your comment is wrong, you can remove it. But basically all the comments for that section just get merged and put in there. Instead of having a group comment. I'm trying to minimize the amount of work to make it so it can just be, if everybody has 3 comments in a section, it can be 15 comments in that section. But it's just take what is there.
So you're saying each of the 5 trustees
Do their
writes
own
up their own eval,
Right,
and then when we meet, we actually merge all of the things for each block from each of those trustees into the form?
unless
Yeah.
somebody wants
Is that
to
what you
take,
mean?
well, unless somebody wants to just strike out or change, they may say, well, I didn't think about that, or I forgot about that. They
So
take
they
out
can
their
amend
comment.
their input. It's
Right.
gonna be a long. So 10
And it's a lot
block.
It's a lot less long, and if
So,
we try to decide our group comments.
so just as someone that would be receiving a lot of feedback, you know, you could have 2 completely conflicting statements in the same area. And I don't know that I would find that helpful. I would find that more.
But the overall
confusing.
one has to be merged. But there's a final one that, these are the 7 areas there. So these are basically just comments, observations of trustees. But the overall one at the end, that gives the overall rating. Those comments have to be agreed to by all.
But you could write down, for example, the director does a lousy job managing finances, and then trustee blank could say she does a great job. And then the library director gets both comments.
Yep.
What does the board say as a whole? I think that,
That has to
I
go
think at the,
in here.
I think
Summary.
we probably should be somewhat aligned in our evaluation.
Well, that's why
Any given block.
That's why we meet, but I'm saying the default is the comments just move in, but if we want to, if we say this is what everyone goes around the table and says what they're saying, and we see the discrepancy, we can explain to somebody why it really isn't that. Somebody else can explain why they're wrong, and we can do
You
something.
mind if I ask Katie how they did it? Just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Katie, if you don't mind, did the board as a whole fill out the different blocks together as a group? Or did you sort of do a pre-evaluation individually and then come in and meet, or how? If you
No,
don't
we did
mind.
it as a group,
Mhm.
and the board, you know, we're nothing as individuals. We are the board evaluating. So if individual comments, were not what we looked for. We looked for a board comment.
Cause I tend to think it needs to have a unified
Well-
decision. I mean, like, we are the board. And I think I think it might make sense for everybody to individually fill out their own thoughts, let's say beforehand. But then formulate the actual verbiage as a group based upon what you brought to the table.
What I'm
Instead of having
trying to do is make
5 different versions of,
make this simpler so that all 7 areas don't have to get averaged and all this stuff. What really matters is the overall summary. Because that's where the rating goes. Basically, each of these 7
well,
areas.
it's also official documented feedback to the individual being evaluated. And so if the first block, organizational leadership, and there would theoretically be 5 different sentences or 5 sets of 2 or 3 sentences.
Yeah.
Stuffed into whatever the form looks like. Which may or may not differ greatly in what the individual trustees think. So what does the board think as a whole then regarding organizational leadership? I think it'd be pretty mixed up. I mean, it'd be pretty conflicting for a person to understand
Well,
how we see that director.
you can either, force that we have agreement, but, what I'm saying in the next sentence, we meet and discuss our individual trustee inputs, and then we vote on overall rating and comment section, in the comment section, and join with individual trustee, but we could,
Did we say that the board of trustees individually draft input to be used in executive session to formulate the actual eval?
Tom, I'm just looking to. You got 5 people evaluating,
Yes.
and you got 7 areas, and you got a bunch of different comments. I think the default could be, if we can't agree, just put the individual comments in, but this summary has to be from the board.
What is that summary?
This is the one where she gets ranked. All these others,
At the very end of it?
yeah, all these others, in my view, is just you check off meets acceptable performance. If there's something that's really bad, you can mark it unacceptable, but you better document it. But
Is this the form?
Yeah.
Does Alexa have that?
so I'm just saying, this just gets really complicated. You have to merge all 7 things. So basically, I would imagine everybody's just gonna check acceptable and you'll just be comments.
I think the board speaks as a whole. The
That's what
board
this
makes a decision on anything. We either agree to a budget, we agree to this or that. We're gonna, it guarantees we're gonna have conflicting feedback for the director within each of these blocks. Because you're gonna see things that I don't see. You're gonna like certain areas, thinking, oh, did a great job, organizational leadership, and I'm thinking, I wasn't too impressed with this or that. So what am I supposed to see as the individual receiving this report?
You'll see there's a discrepancy among the board. Some think this and some think that, but that isn't what she's being rated on. These are basically comments. Unless somebody marks unacceptable, but generally, I think, everything is gonna be acceptable and it's just gonna be comments.
Yeah.
And if we wanna spend time, I'm saying that, we can spend time about changing comments to make it uniform, but these are just comments.
Comments mean things.
But this overall one has to be uniform from the board. Not only
That's the last page, or more or less? Okay,
page 6. Yeah.
Yes, but
Or not, that's
whatever.
it's page 8 of 10.
I think there needs to be unity
Well, there has to be
in
one.
not just the end page. I mean, this is,
Well, we can talk about that as a board, but
because theoretically, look, I'm looking at your new form here. You are gonna rate the director
no. You
on
just,
each one of these areas, right?
no, you're just gonna mark acceptable. If there's something you really feel is unacceptable, you can mark it, but you better have good documentation.
And well,
But it's basically a chance to put comments about that.
I mean,
But I don't think we should come to the board and have groupthink to suppress what somebody thinks. If somebody really thinks something, and somebody thinks the opposite, if we can't agree on something common, just put both comments in.
director have a comment?
yeah, I mean, I guess what I would expect is that the trustees would review the self-evaluation and accomplishments and so they would come to the executive session with that prepared. I think kind of what you're getting to in this other line about an evaluation form, but maybe make, personal notes about things that were exceptional or things that were concerns and specific examples, like you were saying. So then when you have everyone having a discussion, then you can speak to specifically, like at this occasion, this didn't get sent out, or it was a pattern, or whatever that specific concern or praise was. So you come to the meeting prepared, trustees come prepared.
With this thing filled out basically with their own comments of what they think.
Sure. But essentially it's the discussion in the meeting, and I don't want to make that sound or belabor it, but it is hard work. It is really hard work for all trustees to come up with evaluations every year. And there is a lot of differing opinions. And sometimes you have to concede that you're the only one of 4 that felt that way. And sometimes everybody's in alignment. And
That's part of it. If there's a majority, 3 of 5 that think something, the other 2 should realize. Or if there's one on every, from excellent all the way down to needs improvement or something. You can't just average it.
the goal is to, I mean, maybe taking the step back, but the goal of a performance evaluation is really to give what do they call that? A broad perspective. So you may or may not know a lot about how I interact with staff. You may or may not know a lot about how I interact with the public. You may only see this one portion of me interacting with you, but that's only a very small portion
Sure.
of the bigger job. And so I think that's why having everybody give input is so important, and that the goal is really to, if you would, give opportunities for demonstration. And the other thing that I have in my notes is that the evaluation is very much a goal setting and, an evaluation on whether those goals were achieved or not. So the
Right.
very first evaluation is really not heavy, if you would, on the evaluation criteria. It's heavy on what is it that the board wants me to get done with the staff and the resources and all of that. And so that has to be one agreed upon set of goals. So there's the evaluation part, and then there's the board and the director setting goals together. And so those are the 2 main legs of this.
And that's what this is on the last page. It's basically for the coming year. You set objectives and things to do for development. And then the following year,
That's the other one, Katie. This was the one. Okay.
the following year, those kind of go into the first page. So how did you do with your objectives? And you're gonna get certain programs set up and all that, and that's what you address. The things from the previous year and the development, and then additional accomplishments and things. So that part is the same. Just the first year, you don't have the previous year input put in here. But I think we do need to come away with the following year the last page, 10, following year objectives and development, and what the board is expecting. That has to be uniform with your buy-in, that they're realistic.
What I have seen is that whenever there was a board working and there was one person that felt very strongly, there was still always an inclusion of that in a statement to the director. So it wasn't ignored, but it may not have had the full weight of the whole board. Do you know what I'm saying? So
That's fine. We should, I guess I'm agreeing, we should try to merge the comments somehow instead of just.
But it needs to not be contradictory. Do you know what I'm saying? And that I'm very worried that we're gonna have contradictory.
Okay, my thinking was just make it simple for now, and just this part is just comments, but okay, so.
I was just drafting this one. What if we say, I didn't finish writing it, but using the director's self-evaluation form, or whatever we call it, and the trustee's individual observations, each trustee brings, let's say, a draft eval form into executive session.
Which are you?
I'm still on the second bullet. No, the second bullet. Because each
Second
individual,
sentence.
yes, the second sentence, yeah.
Okay.
Consider the individual, I can't see a hodgepodge of commentary that are gonna be conflicting. 5 different observations need to be unified and delivered, because we speak as a board, in my opinion, not as individuals.
Well, I think it shouldn't be in the second sentence. I mean, the board, the individual trustees still need to fill out their form.
Right, we would be
And they've
using,
already got the first sentence, they've already got the director's form. So the third paragraph is where we meet and we formulate,
yeah, but they're using, I think
formulate a uniform set of comments or something.
well, you're jumping, yeah, I'm still working on the second bullet there, a second sentence.
I don't think it
I
should
was
be.
saying using the director's self-evaluation and the trustee, and I'm sorry, and our own observations, then we each we prepare a draft of the evaluation form
Well, we
in
can-
preparation for the
we can do
executive,
that,
for
but we can
executive.
do that, but I
And then we actually go to the executive session and we come up with a unified voice on each category that's being evaluated. I think that,
So the second sentence, individually complete an evaluation form using the director's
well,
self-evaluation.
if you want what I wrote or
I don't know what you were,
what I wrote, I said, oh, listen to it if you like it first. Using the director's self-evaluation, what are we calling it? Okay, self-evaluation is generic. And the trustees and using the individual trustee, I'm sorry. And the trustees' individual observations, they can reword that one. Each trustee will bring a draft of the evaluation, to the executive session.
I don't like draft. I mean,
Something to that nature.
I would just say that-
But they're individual drafts. It's not a final product.
Yeah. They
And then
complete-
we turn it into a final product as an executive, an
How
executive
about
session.
just saying here, they individually complete an evaluation form,
Okay.
at the end of the sentence, using director.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
input.
think it's just to say draft. It's a draft. It's not,
Well, it's a form, you're filling out the form. I
Okay.
would say it's the evaluation.
tell me what you like, how you
I
do you
just
want to
leave the sentence the way it is, except
Let me
at the
see.
end, using director
do?
input.
I would almost recommend taking it out. I mean, this is a policy and you're telling all the trustees what they have to do. So, I mean, if they choose to do it, they can. And like I said, that's probably what I would is preparing for that meeting is probably what I would do. But this is a policy. And so you're making it a requirement that all trustees come with that. And
Yeah,
like I
I-
said,
I think it is a requirement. They
my
better- They better
requirement
do
would
their
be
job.
that they are reviewing the self-evaluation before they need to formulate a single thing. I don't think having individual statements, I don't think that's a requirement. I think
I
that,
think it is. I think because, I mean, they each need to think this through, what they're gonna say.
but the goal is a conversation and the goal is communication and one clear message.
I
And
can see
so,
dropping the entire second sentence out there, actually, to be honest with you.
No, I don't.
Because we are gonna come into executive session, we should, just like we come to these meetings, not just today, we should walk in here prepared. Obviously, I'm not gonna walk in to work on a performance evaluation with the board as a whole. With a blank piece of paper in my hand, I already have some ideas and some things I've captured throughout the period that's being evaluated.
I'm still saying the default is if you come in without any comments, you're probably not gonna get your comments put in.
Then they don't, then they just have to roll with what the rest of the board comes up with.
So,
And I
I
think
think
the fewer requirements, we shouldn't require ourselves to do anything. We're the top of the game here. To me, we may do this, we may do that. I don't want to must, because if we mess it up, then who's gonna punish us besides the public? We have to,
well, do you wanna put the may in there? The board of trustees may individually complete. I think it should be in there because that's part of the process.
I think it
Or you can
gives
say they
the
could
wrong
prepare.
impression that, like I said, it's a group evaluation. Even though that's difficult, it is a group evaluation. And so by emphasizing individuals' input, it overemphasizes it. You really should not, it should be a discussion.
I disagree. I think you better come in with your thoughts.
No, you can.
Worked out, but I'm just saying,
but what we give the director should be a unified answer.
well, and we can put that in the third sentence.
Well, I'm okay without the second sentence, or we can just say,
No, we can talk about-
the board should, taking into consideration the, self-evaluation form and their own, basically, we don't have to say that. Come prepared for executive session.
What I wanted was us to come in with comments, and if we couldn't agree on, we at least put the comments in that we've got. I don't know how we're gonna come to agreement necessarily on things, but
Meaning here right now.
no, in doing this, if there's opposing comments,
It's gonna be difficult. I've never done an
I don't know.
evaluation on somebody as a group. I've done my own
you know,
performance evaluations on people for many, many, many years. And I never had to do it as a team. So I don't, it's clumsy, I gotta say.
I don't see anything wrong with saying that, you know, these were comments from trustees.
It's kind of like if, let's say one of the trustee comments, I know who said it. That's not appropriate either. Do you know what I'm saying? Like when you're receiving that information, if I'm like, this is from that trustee, this is from that trustee.
No, maybe,
And so it has to be, and I will say that, I have had experience where trustees have met for like one person drafted it. And then everybody was like, yes, we all agree, or add this or add this. And it was like a start of one. And then more details were, and then I've had some that were more contentious where they wanted to, you know, hash it out and really all work on it together. And so there are different ways that trustees can do that, but if exactly the example that you're talking about, if people are far apart, then you need to just plan on more time for you to meet to come to something that everybody can agree on.
Well, we want to make a note next to that one that
discuss.
we may
with the
have to
board.
discuss that with the rest of the board, because I just kind of think that you come into executive session and do an eval. Hopefully you got some self appraisal on the person you're evaluating, the library director, and hopefully you have some notes of your own as being prepared to sit down in executive session. So,
Well,
so do you want to leave that one?
we can leave it with a note, you know, to discuss the board. I
Okay,
guess.
so I'm gonna leave that as a big question mark on that one.
I think just the term individual trustee, that's what I'm concerned with. I'm concerned about drawing attention to the individual rather than the collective.
That's in the third paragraph, though.
Right. Well,
I'm just saying, I guess we could say it is suggested the board trustees complete or something.
So I'm leaving two as a
But I,
debate for the full
Yeah.
board at this point, because we're not gonna see, I
Yeah.
don't even wanna see eye to eye on that one. I just think that you either do a draft, each person on their own, using the input from the director and your own observations, and that's your preparation, and then you walk into the executive session, and you actually then work as a group to come up to a consensus to say, this is what the board sees in this area and how.
I just think we should put it in the policy because it's an expectation of trustees to do their work.
Okay.
I would just say it is suggested that board trustees individually complete an evaluation using director input.
Oh, that's okay.
observation.
If you wanna make us I'm sorry,
It is
could you repeat
suggested,
that again?
it is suggested that right in front of the sentence there, the board trustees individually complete, and then at the end, using director input and personal observations.
Okay, in preparation for the executive session?
Well, of course, I don't know if we have to say that.
Well, it's in there now, but, oh, you didn't strike it.
It's prior to the executive session. I just left that in there. I just added to the end of the sentence.
So let me just make sure I understand it. It is suggested that the Board of Trustees individually complete an evaluation form prior to the executive session board meeting using director input.
And personal observation, or I don't know if you have.
I'm okay with that. In general, I don't think it's necessary.
I don't think you
but-
need to say personal
I
observation.
was just gonna say, I would probably recommend leaving that out
Yeah,
and just saying, using director
Yeah.
input.
That's fine.
I
I'm
just-
okay with that. It's loose. It's not critical. It's in a given, but.
I think it's putting it in the policy is kind of,
All right, I can live with it.
is putting the framework of how we do this.
Okay,
We don't say it. You know,
Okay, so the next one, the board meets.
the board meets in executive session without the library to discuss all the individual trustee inputs and formulate. And I guess we can change this, formulate uniform comments.
Is to complete the entire performance evaluation form.
And they can strike this at the end and join all
So the
individual
board meets in executive
inputs.
session without the library director to discuss individual inputs and formulate. I would
And I
say,
let
and
formulate
complete, and
So
complete,
you can't vote in executive session. You can't, I wouldn't use the word vote.
or when you're, I was thinking of voting. Post, you know,
You can't vote. I mean, how do we determine that this is what we want?
You don't take an official action in executive session.
but we complete the evaluation during the executive session.
It's
So we have to
basically
come out of-
agreement. It's basically, I don't know how to tell,
Yeah.
how else to say it. You guys all have to, you don't get to leave until you agree.
Yeah.
So we have to come out and then vote on well, I mean, we have to vote to
So
have a
you-
board action.
You come to an agreement and then the director is invited in. And then the evaluation is given in
No,
executive.
this one we would go to, I think we need to go to the, legal. Is what we were saying, our comments and everything, I think should be looked over. That's what I put in.
It's never really been that in my experience, but it's because, if the feedback is relative to the job, then you have quite a bit of protections, if that makes sense. But it also
What
like,
if we use the wrong wording? That's mainly what I'm saying, is legal should.
I mean, you can have it reviewed, but I've never seen that for an evaluation. It's usually like discipline or acts like that are usually with the board and council.
Well, I think this is a two-step process. I don't think we're ready at this point to have the director come in.
Well, and
But we would have to come out of executive session. And maybe it all has to get typed up better and. all
Yeah.
that. So we'd come
I mean,
out of
that's-
executive session, but I think we'd have to take a vote when we came out to approve what we did.
Or,
I've never seen a vote.
How does the board take action? I mean,
yeah, it's not-
they
We're-
can't without a vote, 2/3 or a majority.
I don't think we're voting. We should even use that word in there. But
I
we're
would
basically coming to a
actually
consensus as a board. I think on each of the areas in the whole, I think it could be as simple as the board meets an executive session without the library director to complete a single performance evaluation form.
That's accurate.
I think that's all we're doing.
That's fine, yeah.
And how we hash it out and then hit each other and argue, we should come up with a single finished product. And I think that we just say completed, that's it. Are does that work? I'll repeat it, if it's just, the board meets an executive session without the library director, which is already a given, but we write that in there, to complete a single performance evaluation form. That includes everything, whether it's the individual, the writing, the overall, whatever
Yeah,
sort, I think that it's short and simple, and that's what we're doing.
So the board meets an executive session without the library director to complete a single evaluation form.
Or performance evaluation form, whatever, either way. You okay with that one?
To complete
A single
single,
performance evaluation form, or just evaluation
how
form.
about well, I guess. Something to come to consensus on single. I guess that does imply. Well, you're making it a lot more complicated than what I was hoping to make it simpler, where all we had to really deal with was this page 8. And the rest was just individual comments.
That's pretty.
That's the overall performance.
Yes, but that's just,
That's the one that matters, I think.
well, they all
Yeah.
matter.
The other,
We're giving feedback. I mean,
Yeah.
feedback hopefully was given all through the period. It's not a surprise. And this simply documents that we've been basically, hopefully verbalizing or writing So it's not a surprise to the director. But
Okay, we can leave it that way.
I will say both, and in my feedback, both of these are very long and exhaustive. And so if you look at a lot of just National Library Director evaluations, these are going to be on the far end of detailed. And if you're concerned about how it's going to go, then I would say make it shorter,
shorter is better.
Yeah.
Evals are time consuming,
less,
hard work.
less area.
I thought that form you had was standard or something.
It was used before for Amy.
What I don't like about it is you gotta go for each of the 7 sections and come with a uniform number.
So this would, yeah, I was just gonna say, if you wouldn't mind, Katie, could kind of, I saw in the files, there was a different one for John that was very straightforward. And then I saw this introduced around Amy's time.
Yeah.
And I think this is over in the extreme camp. I would simplify it.
Are you guys aware that they're exactly the same? This and this one.
Except for the end, he changed the end.
I'd like to tell you something.
Which two are you comparing?
Do I see that one? I know what that is. What's the other one?
The
one
one
that
that was handed today.
Trustee
Oh,
Claskey.
They're the
I
same.
think,
Oh, that's where I took it from.
Yeah.
I took it out of
Oh.
there, because I thought that was that was standard. I was just, what I tried to do was eliminate each 7 sections, trying to average all this and then average all that. I just wanted to do one time.
I would recommend simplify.
I like it. Okay, yeah.
I was just gonna tell you what happened when we used this form.
Yes.
And we did it because we were struggling, evaluating a director. It's like nailing Jello to the wall. It's really hard. But this actually, it might not be great on that end. This actually helped us last year. But what we did was, because it gave us real good talking points of every area, so it helped us focus. So, it helped us focus as a board. And we individually rated and then came up with a rating for each section. That actually helped us on a board that wasn't feeling quite unanimous. And so I realized that Alexa's giving a different point of view, and I think that that's important.
I just think doing a bunch of ratings in 7 sections and then an overall one is just over the top.
It worked really well last year, very well.
But we can go by our comments and what we're saying, I think. Did you get a copy of, or did you give her a copy? Do you have what I have?
Mhm.
I didn't think I handed out an extra one.
I had assistant help make a copy.
Oh, okay, so I have one.
So are you saying fewer categories you've seen elsewhere? Because really the only important, I think, when it's all said and done, is the ending of, okay,
It's the overall.
satisfactory or not, pretty much.
Well, I think all these areas give you focus your comments and areas to think of. I don't think, for making comments, I don't think it matters. I seriously doubt anybody's gonna put unacceptable, but
So you think we would go through this?
and that's all you do in there. It's just, it's acceptable, but you can at least guide your comments.
Do we like the idea of using the form? I don't care if it's this format or the other format to help us think through it internally, and then we don't even submit those pages. We just simply go to a summary at the end and say, they're a good guide. They're good thinking points when you go through here.
I think
You know,
that should be,
proactive problem solving, articulate, those are good things to use as memory joggers and
I think it's a good thing to put comments in, and if the board can't agree, I guess we could just leave it blank, but, I think that, to me, this is the area that we would say, we notice the director did an outstanding job at, organizing these programs, and we would write this down. It would have to do with management or something. And it would help us make a uniform comment about that area. So I think that's good to do that.
can I suggest then we go back to the form at the end and think of the policy then? I don't know if that's good or bad.
Adopt a policy, which is like this, and then the form doesn't necessarily have to be adopted with it. And if you want to change it or use
Right.
something in the future, you can too.
Before we're done, though, we have to have a form and a policy, I think. I mean, not today, but
I mean, what you're adopting is probably gonna be the policy. You're probably not gonna want to formally adopt unless you do. I mean, it's up to you if you want to tie them together. But if you make changes on this, then you would have to change.
What I-
the
what I
policy.
with the policy, you have to be saying you're gonna merge. You're gonna do individual ratings of each of those sections, and I think all we're trying to say here, well, we are leaving a blank how we're doing it, but it's a lot easier to just come up with some common comments than to try to do 7 sets of ratings, so.
That makes sense.
You wanna go back and continue on the policy then?
Yeah.
And we'll go back and figure out the form we should.
The form, my comments were kind of tied into the form, but,
So we on the next one?
so the last one is if the board is unable to achieve 2/3 majority to enter the executive session, the board chairman uses individual trustee performance evaluation input, produce an overall rating of the board, and attaches trustee inputs as the completed evaluation form. The board votes to approve the prepared evaluation without public discussion.
Well, I wouldn't put the individual inputs.
Don't have any choice. We can't go, if we can't go into executive session and discuss it. I'm just saying this is a solution. If we don't get 4 out of 5 votes to go into executive session, we can't discuss it in public.
Board to achieve majority.
All we have are our forms, and the chairman has to basically give an overall rating, average all 5 of them or something, but we did have trouble getting into executive session, so, a couple times. So I just think we should have something in there.
I think there should be something there as what we do if we can't go to executive session. That shouldn't be a problem because one of our statutory jobs is to evaluate the library director, so we shouldn't have a problem with the other trustees,
Right,
myself included, or you going into executive session to do it.
but if we can't,
If we
what do we
can't,
do? Just
well, then-
adjourn and come back and try the next week? I mean, we can't just,
Maybe that's where you throw it on the chair. Basically, everyone puts their individual trustee inputs together and the chair prepares the final evaluation
that's kind of what I'm saying, but.
without the individual, because again, it's a board eval, not your eval or my eval.
Well-
It's the board's eval. So,
What is,
and it shouldn't be an issue because we shouldn't have problem going into executive
in
session.
this case, instead of the chair coming up with their own comments, which may be biased or something,
Could be. you
just-
know, or that.
that's the only choice. We can't meet and discuss it, so just use the individual. The director's gonna know this is a really messed up evaluation if we can't
Yeah.
get into executive session, but
So I would say that my concern is that no singular trustee has any more authority than any other, so it doesn't seem like that is within the realm of a chair, if you would. And that's putting more authority or responsibility on the.
yeah,
trustee
document, I mean, if she's gonna,
It seems like, my second point would be, this hasn't happened yet. I don't have any reasonable assumption that this would happen. So it seems like if you needed to, you could take an action, at that point if something happened. So to include it in a general policy, before that having happened seems, I guess, premature, or it seems, and like I said, I have concerns that it's the chair, mainly from the point of it's a trustee and all the trustees are equal. And
well,
I would almost say if you had to, it would be better if legal counsel drafted it on and then sent it to the whole board for review and approval.
what can I do?
I don't think using the chair is.
The chair, in my mind, the chair, if she found 3 of the trustees put very good and 1 put exceptional and 1 put acceptable, three is a majority, she would always put the very good. Instead of trying to make an average number, if she saw that how they did it, she would basically go with the voting on their form. On their individual forms. That's why I think the individual forms are important to come in, if this were to happen.
Like I said, my recommendation would be to not put it in the policy. It hasn't happened, and
No.
it seems like putting the cart before
I'd
the
be
horse.
okay with striking it.
And the second would be, it seems like a misuse of the role of chair. They don't have that authority.
Well, it still has to go to the legal counsel. That's the next paragraph. Or the next sentence, so,
I mean, it's appropriate for the chair to send it to legal counsel for review. But I would strike that if not 2/3 would be my recommendation.
I think I want to leave it. We
Then I would
discuss it
change
with
it.
the board.
From chair to legal counsel.
Well, it does go to legal counsel.
I'm saying I would have, if unable, the majority, then the, legal counsel uses individual trustee performance. That it be assigned to legal counsel and not the chair. I don't think the chair has that kind of statutory authority.
Probably not.
They
But
run meetings, they, I mean, they don't make individual determinations and speak for the whole board. I think that's actually a violation.
And I don't think legal counsel's job is going to be to fill out an evaluation form and have to merge everybody commentary. I think that.
I don't think so either.
The legal counsel's job is probably to say, this is a risky thing to accuse somebody of this, good or bad. And let the board know that, and then we make a decision, we want to change the wording or not.
Well, that's why the next sentence it
So-
says board chairman.
Right, I'm okay with that one, but.
So I think.
I can live without the whole discussion on the lack of, unless you want to leave it there for the full
I
board
do,
to talk
I
about.
do. Because I think we should have it.
All right, so we have,
The whole thing is, we cannot have a public discussion about this,
yes,
and I want that in the policy.
all right, so then you want us to discuss that as a board as a whole for now.
Yeah. But.
So we got two little impasses here so far,
To
okay.
me, this was just simply the chair puts all the comments together. And if she has a majority, I mean, if the majority are above very good, then I mean, we should go by the majority to.
Okay, it's not written in stone. I'm the one that wrote that initially. The
Yeah.
board, if unable to go, 2/3 majority.
Yeah.
I'm also willing to strike it. I'm also willing to modify it. So we'll leave that open for discussion. Okay. And the board chairman submits a completed performance evaluation form to board legal counsel for review. I'm okay with that. I don't know.
I guess I put this back in the previous paragraph votes, but we basically. Did we ever, I guess we are saying we complete a form. That's the one that's going to the legal counsel.
Yeah, the one.
I
the
thought
one
we had
finished
to,
product.
I thought we had to vote. And basically, that's where if we had a public session. The papers are all presented in front of us and we can't discuss it, but we can vote. Yes, we accept this.
I don't think we voted. There's no vote. I don't think.
Well, I still don't know how the board agrees with what the chairman comes up with.
We didn't agree.
The
that
chairman
this-
shouldn't be coming up with
We
something.
still didn't agree that that's.
If
I mean, there's
the
options.
compile, it's just a compile of all of ours and it's there and we can't discuss it publicly. But we could all vote, no, I don't want this. It's a chance to say if we approve.
I mean, the board could work with a consultant, the board, I mean, there's other options. And like I said, it feels very imagining a problem that is
Okay.
unlikely to
Hire a
occur.
mediator.
Well.
I mean, to be
we-
honest, if the board can't go into executive session, your executive director is the least of your worries, right? I mean, let's be real.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have had the case where we get into executive session.
So do we agree that we're gonna take it to the full board to
Yeah,
talk
I
about
guess
not
so,
going to
yeah.
executive session?
I just think in this case, this is something we would vote on, that last sentence,
Yeah, I don't
before,
think-
because if we don't like what the chair did, so the, or the compiled version, unless whoever does it, we need to have a say.
Okay, so the board chairman submits,
But it's voted on without discussion as well. Okay, and yeah, then it goes to legal review.
yeah.
I would just change the word, it's not board legal counsel, because they're really for the entity. So I would just
Just remove
remove the
all.
word board.
Take out board, I think that's fine.
Board
That was in your original, right?
chairman, full board executive session, so,
Okay, then we come back and meet with the library director in executive session.
discussion, do I read that?
And I don't know if we want to say the board chairman presents it. I think the board's chair is the one that should
It's fine, and I've always liked,
review it.
yeah, I've always liked somebody to give me my performance evaluation, let me read it first and then talk about it, because I can't read it and process verbal discussion at the same time, but either way, okay.
Again, I would just be the board meets an executive session with the director to discuss evaluation. And then sometimes boards choose someone as a spokesperson. Sometimes they alternate. I mean, that can be determined by the board when they're discussing the evaluation.
So I say the board meets an executive session with the library director and presents the approved.
And presents, yeah, we don't have to say the board chairman.
So usually it's framed as a discussion and goal setting, or it's less of the imposed language and more of the mutually agreed language. So that would be my only feedback. I think it's more useful just saying the board meets an executive with this director to discuss the evaluation, kind of the way it was written, but taking out chairman or full board.
Do you think instead of presents, discuss?
Mm.
And we probably should add to that, this page 10 to although that should be done beforehand. I think when do we meet with the director and ask and work out common objectives for the director for the coming year? I think we want suggestions from the director before we even start up the coming, but maybe we couldn't do that until we're all done.
Could that be part of the performance input? A block on there, the director could suggest, here's some of my goals for next year, and then when we meet and do the evaluation, we review the goals. And then when we say here, the board meets an executive session with the library director and discusses the approved performance evaluation,
And,
which would include
and,
goals, I guess.
and,
So
objectives and development for coming year.
like I said, usually that one sentence, board meets an executive session with director to discuss evaluation. That is when you're doing the goal setting and evaluation of ratings. That's usually one meeting.
But I think it's at this meeting, and I don't know whether you beforehand or the director beforehand would submit objectives for the coming year. I think that's done in
Usually
this meeting.
some of it's on the accomplishments and self-evaluation. So you could make that accomplishment, self-evaluation and goals, preliminary goals.
Well, if the director fills out this, they would fill out their coming year objectives and goals. I would hope.
Usually those are mutually agreed upon. I mean, usually it's the director saying, these are areas that I'm focused on, and this is what I've heard from the board, and this is what, I think the goals need to be, you've heard that phrase, SMART goals, specific, measurable, all of those kinds of things. So, the evaluation factor of these goals is a pretty key part.
It is.
And it feels very like, I have it in my comments, it feels like an afterthought to this process when That's probably, especially at your first meeting when you start with your goals.
The second page though is last year's goals and how you did.
Mhm.
But I'm just saying we shouldn't come to the very end to discuss it with you and not have gone over next year's objectives and goals. I think we need
It's
to,
usually a discussion. It's usually some of my thoughts, some of your thoughts, and then a product that we've done together. I
is
mean,
that when we do it, when we meet? Okay,
So would we,
for coming year.
would we say the board meets in executive session with the library director to discuss the approved performance evaluation and
And objectives,
Goals,
objectives
whatever
and
objectives, I
development.
don't care, goals, objectives.
That's what's, and for the coming year.
I don't know what they've done here before, but that's usually you just have one meeting. And time wise and executive session wise and 2 hours is tough.
This would be the one meeting. This is the one time meeting with the director. I just thought maybe it should be filled out before we have this meeting, but I guess, yeah, we can do it then.
I mean, it's usually what you bring prepared. You can talk about accomplishments, and so usually those are how you've met your goals. But the first year you don't have that.
You would, or the director would submit that at the beginning of the previous year. So we would have to then take this offline and get those typed in. You wouldn't sign any, or the director wouldn't sign anything. We could get those objectives and development put in, clarified. And then the last part, directors presented with an opportunity.
Oh, I didn't finish that one.
Oh.
I wanna make sure we get the wording down, so I'm just gonna guess. I don't- If
I
this is
put it
correct.
at
The
end
board
of
meets in executive session with library director to discuss approved performance evaluation and objectives for the coming year.
objectives and development plan for the coming year.
Is that on here?
That's page two, and
Objectives and what?
development plan. For development, yeah.
Is the development plan usually only if there's a problem?
No, it's
All right.
maybe classes she's gonna take, maybe it's,
So it is different language though than what has been used on the.
Different numbers than what?
In like our previous form. This had described 3 areas where performance could be more effective, review past goals, set 3 or 4 goals for the upcoming year. Has the executive director's performance been at a level that merits consideration of additional compensation?
and this is just kind of open, let's let's put whatever we want in there, I guess.
So where are we writing on?
I just, into the end of that sentence, I put, I guess to the very end of the sentence that was there originally, to the library director, doesn't need to be there, because we're meeting with the library director. And
Can you read the whole sentence?
The board
We
meets,
can't wing it.
the board meets in executive session with the library director and presents approved performance evaluation and objectives and development plan for the coming year.
I would prefer either goals and objectives or just objectives. I think the development plan has not been really decided by the board. I do think that is some charged language. So I think being more general.
Objectives would be, things that we want to get done. We want to get, item 2 on the strategic plan implemented, and we want to build a new library, and we want to, so those would be objectives. Development would be something the board would maybe see as a weakness where you could improve or something, or you could become more effective.
So I would read that as part of the discussing the approved evaluation. And it really is goal setting that you're talking about, goal setting and objective set, goal and objective setting for the coming year.
No, that's, I can change that. To me, goals is the same as objectives. The development is something that the board would like to see the director's effectiveness become better by developing.
So again, this is a general policy for any director. And that was something that was added to a form that we haven't really discussed or decided. So,
I'm just saying, to me, goal and objective is the same word.
yeah, I mean, I think again, specific, measurable, all of those types of things. So a goal could be broader, an objective would be how you measure that goal. It could be, you know what I'm saying? Like, if the objective is to increase library card holdership, is that a goal or an objective, and how do you measure it, right? You know,
Right.
so it needs to be very specific.
Yeah, we want to increase circulation.
So in previous years, like the former director was making goals like completing the strategic plan, completing the, compensation study. So those are sort of the goals. It's not necessarily as finite as what you're describing as well. So I
It
don't,
could be an objective too, though, those things. Thinking objective is
I
more
prefer,
personal, or goal is business or something.
I tend to use the word goals, and I tend to use goal setting.
For both personal and,
Well,
business
no, I
or-
mean, I think, like I said, these specifically, the form itself was using past goals for the upcoming year. So I think it's more of what I'm familiar with, just using the words goals and goal setting.
to me, on this form, describe 3 to 5 areas where performance can be more effective. To me, that would be a development. Where we're be more effective in what you're, so I would call that a development plan. Whereas the goals are, I can use the word goals or objectives. They're the things we want to accomplish the coming year. Increase circulation, finish the minor card. It could be a goal, but I think either word, I think. But to me, this be more effective is development.
No, I wrote down, I thought we crossed out development a few minutes ago. I have the board meets an executive session with the library director to present approved, or to say the approved performance evaluation and discuss goal setting and objectives for the coming year. That's what I've got scribbled down so far. Is that, I can read it back again.
That's kind of what I had, but I was just saying, if we're going back to this, areas where performance would be more
Then we'll have to
effective.
modify the policy if we change, if we didn't, do we tweak this if we play with the form? I didn't go through the.
Well, all I was discussing with the director is objectives and goals to me still are kind of business things.
I agree, that's business, those are business things, and the development plan is a
And
personal
to
thing.
be more effective in performance is the development plan, but I kind of like to leave the word development in there, but we can discuss that.
So I think, again, you're kind of pulling back to the board with like, it's your approved evaluation. It's less about that, and it's more about the conversation and the discussion. So I think discuss is a more appropriate word. I mean, yes, it's assumed that you've approved it, you're giving it.
This is to do with the evaluation or to do with the goals?
This was referring to, because you changed it back to present the approved evaluation. And so I still think it's better to discuss the evaluation with the director, because what if you present something and I say, well, you only know this, And then here is a whole bunch of documentation that you don't have access to or you didn't know. You may change your evaluation. Do you know what I'm saying? It's an ongoing discussion until it's done. And then the other part about the 30-day rebuttal, you may change it. So by saying that you've approved it, you're not giving that latitude that you may have to come back. So it really is a conversation and a discussion.
It's obviously can't be final at this point.
It's not final.
Because we don't have your comments and you don't haven't set, even put the goals and the objectives and things in there yet. So after we meet with you, yeah, we could modify something, I'm sure.
I mean, I will say and I sent Tom a copy of it. It had been how the other director, as an example, had filled it out. That was her self-evaluation. She filled out this.
Oh, those comments that were in there when I
Those
blocked it all out?
Comments were from the director.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's why I blocked. I thought, well.
Yeah. And I sent it because it had been sent out to all the other trustees before, but you two both didn't have it, but everybody else had seen that. And it was to give you an example of how they'd done
Okay.
it. So what they had done before was they had the director fill this out and do a self-evaluation.
Okay.
And then that was sent to the trustees.
Yeah, so that's why I blocked. I didn't know. I thought that was erroneously revealed. Here was a person's real evaluation. So I thought, well,
Oh,
I'm not gonna pass that.
self-evaluation. Yeah.
well, I didn't know it was a self-evaluation. So I blocked all that verbiage out of there so that I think it was, inappropriate to share that I got it by mistake, but apparently it's not. So, okay.
Well,
Right.
I thought you wanted an example of how it had been done. So that was.
I did, and I thought that was the actual eval, not the person's
Uh,
input, and I thought, well, it's not appropriate to pass out a past director's eval, so
This
that's
was
why I
sent to
blocked
all
it out.
It was sent to all trustees at the time.
Yes, there was a second one, okay,
If I got it, I'd give you notice.
so where are
So
we?
I would again,
We
you
can
may
put
want
discuss.
to impose it, but it's actually a discussion
Yeah,
and you may change it.
so
To discuss approved.
he meets with the library director or in executive session of the library and discusses.
Well, again, approve sounds like it's voted upon or it's, how are you approving it?
Yeah, I thought it had been approved, so I can see it as discuss, performance evaluation and objectives and goals for the coming year.
Can you read back what you have, so we all are unified?
The board meets in executive session with the library director and discusses the performance
I
evaluation.
put to discuss, but I don't care.
Oh, it does have the the performance evaluation and objectives and development plan for the coming year. Or I go nice cross down development. Object to discuss and objectives and goals for the coming year.
Did you get it?
I'll try to write that. It's a little messy.
Yes,
I'll
it is.
try. But we can go on. I'll try.
That's why I keep rereading it, make sure we're aligned.
I'll try.
Okay, I can let that one be.
I have this in Word, I can send you. Or do you want to?
She's got the,
Yeah, I think we're doing okay. I saw you added library director to that sentence and then a couple others.
okay, we on the next one. Next, the library director is present, or is it?
The library director has presented an opportunity to add personal comments to the evaluation form. Library director is given 5 business days to add comments. After that time, the board chairman and the library director must both sign the final performance evaluation to complete it. And maybe we want more time. You had 30 days. I thought that was a little bit long, but
I don't care, it's 5 business days.
But this is not just, well, in this time, we have to get the goals and objectives put in that are agreed to. So there's more editing to be done, and then the comments if that's wanted. But once that's done, the board chairman is the one who signs with the library director,
Okay,
is what I think.
don't know if I see any issue with it.
So there is some stuff in the personnel policy related to it and um,
Are you governed by this personnel policy?
She was.
it's for all employees.
Hmm.
So, I mean, I will be honest and say that before the board started working on this, it didn't really make sense to me because this is the policy that applies to staff. So if the board, instead of having a separate policy, wanted to revise and add a paragraph about specifically the director, that would be appropriate since this is a board approved policy. I will say that the board has one employee. However, the consistency is important for how all employees are treated. So, I understand the need for a different form and for some of the procedural things, but as we move forward in the policy, I think there's some additional concerns to bring forward.
Is there a section in here
Chapter 6, near the back, near the end.
on evaluation?
Yes. I probably looked at it, when I was on my draft, but I don't remember anymore.
So on page 23, it says employee evaluations are not subject to the opportunity heard provision. However, employees may submit a written rebuttal within 30 days. Employee performance appraisals will be part of the personnel records. It does talk about as well, employee evaluations will be conducted at least once or as individual performance requires within an 18-month period. So the standard for the library is once a year.
But it's at 18 months, what was that? I thought it was 18 months.
It means there's a little bit of latitude if staff are late, but essentially all employees are evaluated once a year.
Right, because I thought 18, I've never seen an evaluation period go beyond 12 months. I've seen some, for new people, 6 months for when they're super junior sometimes, but I've never seen one exceed 12 months. And so I didn't, I
Well, we
think whatever I wrote in that policy, I think it says after the first or second performance evaluation, it's done annually thereafter. I think that's what I wrote.
You got that in there.
And I think 18 months is too long of a period.
Like I said, it's the maximum amount of time that managers have. It does talk about, this is later in the policy, but since we're here, it talks about the business manager keeps official employee and payroll records. Personnel files are not removed from the premises. It outlines access to personnel files.
And the reason I didn't follow that probably is I didn't think that your subordinates should have your performance evaluations. That's why I left it as a chair to have it.
Yeah, I
I've
would
never
say
had
it's probably,
employees.
again, not appropriate for a chair responsibility. There's, like I said, locked cabinets, locked drawers, locked, but this is the policy that the board adopted. There are, I mean, I do have the ability to talk with the business manager and see previous evaluations for other employees. The board has the authority to, again, coordinate and see, it specifically specifies it if it's necessary for business needs. There's some question in here about retention as well. So I addressed that in my notes.
Is that this notes? But I didn't read those yet. Okay.
So, and I know I'm still sort of halfway through, but I know, are we on to? So the 30-day rebuttal is in line with the personnel policy is what I was trying to say. But I think the last part of that statement could probably be removed.
But I guess I wasn't looking at it as a rebuttal. I was looking
That's
to fill out this section. Employee comments.
the personnel policy refers to that as a rebuttal.
I wasn't going by the personnel policy. I would just, I don't think it should take you 30 days to get comments in here.
I don't want to be bound too much by the personnel manual.
Yeah.
Because again, it's our job to evaluate. I'll look at it again. I'd have to refresh myself. I'm sure I looked at this when I was writing this first draft. I don't want to be overly tight because I think it also says that an employee is evaluated 90 days after being employed, whereas the contract says you're not evaluated 90 days. So there's exceptions already, so we can't, I don't really think I want to put exceptions into the personnel manual for the library. Unless there's just one or two, I wouldn't care, but,
So the question is, I guess, in my mind on this paragraph,
what are we on, the italic paragraph right
Yeah.
there?
the library director is
Italicized.
presented with the opportunity to add personal comments. To me, that's the rebuttal. And given 5 business days to add comments, we want to change that to 10. I don't really want to go to 30.
I'm indifferent, I don't want to do 30, it's
Yeah.
too
I
drawn out.
think the personnel policy gives the director some rights and that you're restricting those rights in your statements.
But this is the rebuttal in here, some other totally different document, or
It
is
gives all employees the right to rebuttal in 30 days, including the director. So by saying that to not call it a rebuttal and to call it personal comment, and then to give 5 days instead of 30 days.
but it seems like this is part of your evaluation. So the rebuttal is maybe something totally different that the employee can write.
You would
Or
still
did-
have to have that sentence and you could add a sentence saying that you want my personal comments within 5 days, but I still have a essentially policy right to have 30
Okay,
days.
okay, so I see. You just put that last sentence back in. I was using it as. So you're okay with italics and then replace or reinstitute that. Director may submit written rebuttal with 30 days. Within
So
30 days.
we're removing the entire cross out, the lined out area? That whole sentence, we're putting that back.
Just the first sentence, put it back in.
So I'm not sure I understand. So
Either way.
So the line that's italicized, the library director is presented an opportunity to add personal comments to the evaluation form.
I was
The
gonna keep. that.
library director is given 5 business days to add comments.
Yeah,
After that time, the board chairman and the library director must both sign the final evaluation to complete it.
that's okay if we add that last sentence back
And then
in
say the
again,
director may submit a written rebuttal with 30 days.
within 30
Within
days,
30 days.
but get rid of the second sentence there.
I don't think 5 days is appropriate. I mean, if you have to consult an attorney, if you have to do anything,
Just put in I mean, this is the evaluation form. This isn't the rebuttal. The rebuttal sounds like a different thing.
well, I still think you're tap dancing around the same thing. But I still think 5 business days is still not enough time. I mean, it could be 14 days or,
I can stretch it to 10.
Yeah, five.
Easily, I mean,
10 business days. It's 2 weeks. I'm just looking to get the form filled out and get the,
I think the board needs to keep in mind that, you meet annually or you meet monthly, right?
Yeah.
Like, so.
do it on that or not.
we can discuss it in the meeting, but I think, I'm not trying to equate it with the rebuttal, because I don't think you would do a rebuttal in this. You would do a rebuttal. That's a separate thing by your rights here, is that right?
It depends on how things are presented. If this is a final draft, if this is a conversation, if it's a discussion, I'm not clear where it's at right now.
Well, at the time, it would be.
It's sort of like, it sounds like this process is that we meet, we discuss, we have some goal setting. And then you're asking for, and that's the final. I thought you were saying there has to be time to type it up and sign it. And then you're saying, so while you're typing it up, I'm sending in that 2-week period time or comments that I have. And then you're going to give it to me at the next board meeting, which would be like 2 weeks later.
Well, I don't know about the next board meeting, but I'm just saying within, we meet, we discuss the goals and objectives, and we agree on the verbiage, and we get it written into the section, and you agree on it, and then you can put comments in, and it's within 2 weeks. You presented the final one you're gonna sign. And the board, the chair signs and the director signs, and at that point, comments are in, agreed objectives and development, or don't sign it. If somebody did a typo and didn't do the objectives right, that would be.
So there is a step in between. So you're saying the director, you have this sentence, letter to the opportunity and comments, and then you're saying the board will present and sign, and then you're saying this final statement about the rebuttal.
To me, the rebuttal is something on the personnel policy that you get to do. I don't think it's part of the evaluation policy.
It goes in the personnel file
Sure.
for the employee.
But I don't think you're suggesting that that rebuttal is this comment. To me, this would be something
So
you would say.
what page are you talking about?
Page 9.
The comment, so maybe I'm not understanding.
Page 9. There's two things that signs, one is,
Oh, I see what you're saying. There's a heading that in the new form that wasn't on the other.
My general experience has been a performance evaluation is prepared, not normally as a team, but individually. And then usually the person's boss also has to sign off. The performance evaluation is presented to the individual. And if the individual wishes to contest it or challenge it, if you will, they can, let's say within a certain amount of time. And then it's up to the person or the bosses that prepare it to amend it or not amend it. And you may say, no, I'm sticking with what we've got. I think it's accurate. So I don't know how that fits in this, but I never had a back and forth. Pretty much it's a done thing. Here it is. It's signed pretty much. Not to do with the goals and objectives, but to do with the performance for the period looked at. And then if the person challenges or contests their evaluation and they bring up some good points, you can either modify it or not. I don't know if that helps any, but
I'm just looking to get the process completed and signed. And I suppose that the development plan can actually be a different date, but that's what we're meeting at our meeting with you when we're going over the evaluation.
I kind of think you do the evaluation, completely finish it, and then separately, a completely separate transaction work on goals for the coming period. I don't think it should
Suggesting
be,
the same.
yeah, I don't think it's related to the performance evaluation. That period is over with. It's a separate discussion of where the organization or the goals are for the next.
I think it should be done at the same.
Is that a new section?
One.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see that.
That's why
in the
I
old-
was just 9 and 10 are new.
I'm just
Maybe it's
saying when we meet with the library director and go over the evaluation and go over the performance and all of that. An employee normally has a chance to put in comments. And once the comments are in there, the manager and the employee sign it, it's done. But usually the development and objectives and goals and all that is for the coming year as part of it at the same time. I would think you would sign them both the same day. But if you want to give 2 weeks to do comments, I think that's separate from this right to a rebuttal.
I can see that. I can see what you're saying. And I do think it's better to have the signatures. I know that was missing from this. Was this the actual form that was sent to the people? So yes, I do think having signatures is important. And I like the employee comments.
Yeah.
I think that's good.
So we can say 10 days if it doesn't happen, you know, till the next month's meeting, then that's okay too, I guess. But we need some time to get goals and objectives typed up and put in here, and any comments that are wanted to be put in there, and then a signature.
Do we want the comments and the goals to be as separate? Like not totally associated with the past period? Because we're gonna have our hands full just, I think, completing the evaluation for what already took place.
It has to get signed, and that's what this is completing the evaluation, but it's just a chance for the employee to put
I know,
comments.
employee comments are one thing, and so is a signature, but the objectives for the coming period that have to be,
Well, we
Part of that?
we meet and discuss it at the same time. So why wouldn't it be? If we're going
it
over.
would almost be a separate session to sit down and work on goals and objectives, I guess, I don't know.
So
Well,
normally the board
Yes.
has their strategic plan, and normally the board's goals are really straightforward. And so usually when I'm doing that self-evaluation, it's just basically furthering those. But because we have this lack of clarity right now, I expect that's gonna be a difficult conversation. So maybe this year, maybe the first year, having a separate goal session might be worth budgeting.
Because I don't really know where we're going.
Well, it is,
And it's hard for me to follow
You know,
that type of
it
direction.
is a separate page, but this page 9 needs to get signed to complete the evaluation, but this probably could be done later. I just think we did it in the meeting and we went over it.
I do think, just taking a step back, we have an opportunity. I know it was recommended here like at 9 months. I don't really expect anything until a year. I mean, that's pretty standard for a director. That's pretty standard for all of our staff. So I don't think it's bad to get feedback ahead of time. So, I mean, that's a possibility this time, is that instead of going down this path with an evaluation form at 9 months, maybe have a meeting at 9 months to talk about some of these goals and some of these issues that we might have in preparation for that 12-month evaluation. I'm just saying, I mean, we don't necessarily have to go through all of the forms since we're still in the process.
The 9 months came from the.
Yeah.
No, the reason I did it was regular employees and staff, I think, are evaluated when they're new 90 days. I think this is a 90-day review. That doesn't apply to the library director for the contract. And then I thought, if I do a performance evaluation, we say at 6 months, well, we're gonna be late on our first delivery. That's why I didn't put 6 months, because we're already at 6 months.
Mhm.
I took 9 months because I think it's unfair to the director and to the board to not have the opportunity to have 2 performance evaluations completed before the 2-year contract is up. There is a 2-year, there is a contract, and we can't be working on the next performance evaluation on the same date that the contract technically expires at the 2-year mark. So I thought
The second one would be at
the second one would be basically
12 months after.
9 and 9, whatever, a year and a half into the tenure of the director. And that way, there's 6 months remaining to decide, is the director staying, not staying?
At least 3 months.
And then we would go annual thereafter, is what I wrote somewhere in there.
I thought in the contract.
But that was my rationale in designing the schedule.
I thought somewhere in your contract it said you couldn't be evaluated until at least 9 months or.
No, it says.
It's not subject to the 90-day review.
Oh, that's all it said.
Yeah, that's all it is.
It says the library director is not subject to the 90-day introductory period applicable to other employees. So during that period, the primary purpose for the administration's managers is that there's less of a burden for the at-will versus for cause aspect in that introductory period. And then it goes on to say, notwithstanding the foregoing, the board will evaluate the performance of the library director from time to time which is vague.
A lot of latitude there.
And it's like 0 to 18 months, according to the personnel policy, in accordance with the library's policies and procedures. So I would just articulate that the library's policies, again, it's the 0 to 18 months, right? 18 months is the max. But procedurally, it's every year. Everybody is on a 12-month schedule, and all previous library directors have been on a 12-month schedule. So it's generally timed because there's a pay increase that the board determines. So usually for the director, the evaluation is tied to that. Well, again, we have a contract that's already been negotiated, so that piece isn't tied into it. So my expectation would have been 12 months. But I hear your thinking and your process, so.
Well, if we did 9 months, then 12 months would still be 3 months before the renewal, so we would have a read on it before the renewal
Or,
of the
like I
contract.
said, we can have a conversation. It doesn't necessarily have to be the formal evaluation process.
Mhm.
Like I said, I think it would be more helpful for us to just talk about goals to be real, that I can strive to and deliver in the next year. And then I would recommend an evaluation at a year on that schedule. And then again, you have latitude time to time. So if you wanted to do the next one in 9 months, so there's time before the renewal or all of that aspect. But
Well-
I think, it doesn't necessarily, you do have latitude as long as it's.
It's not gonna work out exactly whatever's in here.
Well, nine
It's
months.
okay. 9 months is okay with me. We can still
July,
go.
October, November, December, January, February. End of February would be the end of the first one. 9 months later, would be another one. And then thereafter, annual. Because the board has the
Well,
latitude.
the second one would be annual.
No, the second would be 9 months after, the second would be 9 months after the first one.
It's
And therefore, they will be
That's not what you
finished
said.
6 months before the end of the 2-year contract. Oh, I don't know what I wrote, but that was,
you said the first one is 9 months and then annually
So
thereafter.
that would be slightly against what the library's procedure is.
Yeah.
we write the procedures.
So
Not trying to be
There's a-
stark,
no,
you know,
no,
silly
agree.
about it, but
I hear you, but I think, the board needs to be aware, and you probably are familiar with the term disparate treatment.
Yes.
If you have 102 staff and you treat them one way and you have one employee that you treat differently. So you have to have reasons for that are,
so we have one employee, we can
well,
treat one way.
but your personnel policy is the board deciding how to treat 102 staff. And your library director policy is determining how you're gonna treat one staff. And if they're in conflict and you don't have bona fide reasons for that treatment,
But the rest of the staff doesn't have a contract.
it doesn't really matter.
You're
You
the
have
only
to
one that
follow
has a
your
contract from my
policy.
knowledge.
You
Yes.
have to follow policy that you created consistently. I mean, you can change it for the whole staff. And I would actually, as an advisement, if you want to do that, you want to change it to 12 months or 9 months or whatever, but that you treat everybody the same. I'm just,
Okay, I get what you're saying, and I'm gonna refresh myself on, it's not a very extensive area on performance evaluations.
it isn't.
It's only 3 pages, I believe. So, and again, I looked at that probably 3.5 months ago, so whenever I started working on this.
So in those lines, I'll just kind of skip a little bit. I know you have performance probation. That's a term that's also not in our current personnel policy for other staff. And so I would also
Is there a
mention
different,
that
is there a different word for it, or there is no such thing?
there's no such thing.
It's a different procedure. Got stuff in here about it.
You talk about a special performance probation,
Mhm.
and so, that has not been spelled out for authority by the board. And again, back to, if you're treating specific employees differently.
But this doesn't govern you because the contract says if we don't renew the contract, then it governs you. So obviously it doesn't govern you
So-
right now.
The way that I would look at it for the board is you have the statutes. So statutorily, I'm a for-cause employee. You can't just say, you're wearing gray today, you're out, right? You have to have a reason, it has to be. So there are statutory requirements that the board has to follow relating to the director. You have adopted a policy and then you've adopted an employment contract. This is binding. So basically, this is what is the most restrictive. If it's not specified in here, then you would go back to a board adopted policy. Does that make sense?
Except personnel policy doesn't
It applies to me.
govern you. Your contract does.
Govern.
Well, I mean, the
These are
contract,
agreed upon, items between the board and the employee.
Yeah.
none
That
of the
does
other
not mean
employees have
that excludes this. It means that I still have all of these rights, but I can be given more rights.
Well, that's probably something we can ask
Yeah,
legal counsel. I
Yeah,
don't know.
maybe.
I don't know the answer, and I'd like to refresh myself on exactly
I
the 3
didn't
pages
understand
there.
how that works together.
And I don't know if one supersede, I agree we have statute, that's obviously the highest level. And I think that the contract is probably the next level. But I can't say that that we're bound to follow the personnel policy manual for everybody else. We have to follow it for you as well. I don't know that, but I'm gonna say it's an area I don't know. But I'm willing to find out.
So where is the section that
So-
talks about how poor performers are dealt with?
So like, I'm just gonna go back to the contract where it says, it does refer to the library's policies and procedures. So even in the contract, it's referring you back to current
I'm
life.
sorry, I was distracted. I was silencing my phone.
So I'm just pointing out that in the contract, it's referring you back to library's policies and procedures.
Okay.
So you're right, statutory contract, but the contract is referring you back.
Okay, I'll look at it.
So, and just again, this special performance probation isn't listed in our personnel policy. And that's like that 30 days rebuttal. All of those things seem to be kind of consistent. So other things I mentioned in here, the records retention, usually that's on the library and the business manager. And not, we keep things for 7 years. Our personnel policy says that they're gonna be on site, not removed from the site. I see there was already a recommendation that we add signature spaces, so I agree. The current policy doesn't have a mention that the director will be given a copy of it, so I think that's probably not appropriate.
It doesn't, Steve?
What's that?
It says down here that the library director may request an opportunity to review or receive a copy of his or her own performance appraisal upon request.
That was, the intent there was if you lost yours or you want another one, it was on file somewhere. So whether that's unclear, I fully expect the library director would get a copy of their performance evaluation when
Yeah.
finished.
Exactly.
Where is that?
It's the last, it's
Under
record
records and
retention.
retention.
So I don't know how we got down there, but
And then I was just gonna mention executive session, so kind of back up there, you cite A, which is related to hiring, and I think B is related to evaluating employees and stuff like that. So I think that's probably just a little bit, I don't think you need A in that citation.
I think we jumped way ahead. We were still,
Oh, you're just saying it's okay if we strike A? Okay. I didn't look into that.
I have some other, like I said, I think we're on the second page, so I was kind of jumping around.
Yes.
a little bit. But just to mention it, we have about 15 minutes unless we go long.
So the evaluation form is where I think we were in the middle of the second page. And that's just saying we're gonna use whatever form. We change the name to match whatever form.
So again, my question would be, under what authority are you adding a special performance probation form? Again, all changes need to be mutually agreed upon. And so I don't believe there's grounds for adding that, and it's not in your personnel policy for other employees. So I would just caution
which part, the performance
the
provision?
evaluation form, because it says, I mean, I think all regularly scheduled
What that's referring to
performance
is
evaluations.
I don't know how the board can do this following something. They're not regular managers. So the idea is we have this regular evaluation schedule, 9 months, and then after annually. And it gives an opportunity with unsatisfactory evaluation result to be placed on probation. And then that is receiving subsequent evaluations every 2 months until you get satisfactory performances. And I mean, it could be one satisfactory. Anyway, it's a chance to not wait a year and see if you got better or the director got better. So I don't know really how the board can go do that otherwise. And then the last paragraph, performance probation. So if the director gets an unsatisfactory, and what that would be, I don't know how it would be averaged. Come up with it, but that would be on page 8. If the board decided that it's check off number 6, unacceptable. And we've got documentation. If it comes up unacceptable, it automatically goes to a probation, which means you go through this process. They don't vote on it. It just, that makes it be automatic. And then in 2 months, another evaluation, and what's written in here is 3 consecutive good evaluations to get off of it. But it, you know, it could be 2, it could be 1, whatever.
So what I'm saying is that you should probably consult legal counsel.
We'll
I
have to,
don't
yeah.
believe that that is an authority or an ability that the board has,
Okay.
because it is not listed in the employment agreement and it is not listed in the personnel policy.
He
So
hasn't-
again,
We haven't given this to him.
exactly.
This is
I'm just
our idea.
cautious on that because
Okay.
again, you're choosing to treat one employee different than the other 102 in the district.
Well, it's my opinion, we're treating all of our employees the same because we have one employee. That's my looking at this.
But
And
you- the
if
board
this
is
didn't apply, if the
responsible.
personnel manual also applied to the director, then none of this policy should be touched at all. I mean, we didn't have a different form. We shouldn't even have any frequency, objectives, you name it. So
So I will
if
say.
I'm listening, if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, you're saying basically this is this, you get the same form, the same input form, the same everything that everybody else gets. I'm not arguing, I'm just asking if that's,
So what I would have recommended if it had come to me was that the board create what they want or need to say and recommend that that go in the personnel policy, specifically covering the employee and the library director. So I
Well,
think,
it will with evaluations, but we don't have any way to, other
so,
than waiting a year to see if.
so
Yeah.
what I was saying was that, so in history, in Community Library Network, there's never been another library director, to my knowledge, with an employment agreement.
I
So
was gonna ask.
that was,
Yeah.
that was a change.
Really.
And again, all directors, there's a form that the board approves. And they use that form and they have followed the same schedule for all other staff, which is annually. The only difference really is that the board sets the director's wage. And so it's typically timed to coincide with the budgeting of that. So in the past, the personnel policy is what covered the director completely. There's been a slight, addition to that with the agreement. But no, I would recommend that this be much more streamlined and have one section in the personnel policy that says, in addition to the regular evaluations, these are factors for the director. But I would make sure, or would recommend, that they be specific and not targeted in any way, that they be relevant to the job and the differences of the job. So for example, if you want me to fill out a different self-evaluation than you want someone that's, shelving books, that makes sense. Their questions relate to their job, this relates to my job. So very specific. I think this has a lot of I think the tendency of the board to create a lot of different policies that are standalone policies. So this has to be reviewed every 3 years. This is an institutional policy. This should be for all directors, all, moving down the road. So there's a little bit of that best practices for policy writing and policy maintenance. It should receive the same kind of legal review that you would make any changes to personnel
Well,
policy.
we'd like to.
So,
So
Okay.
I guess the part I was looking for was on page 24 of the personnel policy. Disciplinary actions available in the middle of the page. I don't know how the board does this. We're not the manager, one person managing, but oral performance behavior improvement plan, written warning or reprimand, suspension without pay, demotion, dismissal, and then to go through all of that. There's all these opportunities to be heard. Employee must notify employer within 2 business days. Employees shall not have opportunity to question unless the supervisor introduces new basis. Anyways, this is all about supervisor employee. And
so
this was just something simple that the board can do. The board could vote to put the library director on probation, and all that means is within 2 weeks, you got to do an evaluation. And that evaluation better substantiate why the board voted for it, but it's documentation of why the board's doing it.
So the manner to do that in this personnel policy is the performance or behavior improvement plan. This is the procedure that we use, the PIP process. So again, back to the contract, it says you follow the policies and the procedures of the organization, and these are the policies.
But if something
and
happens
procedures.
before the next year review,
So
we don't have this
the
option to us.
Exhibit A is a redrafting of this personnel discipline termination policy for the board.
That's your contract.
That's the
I mean,
contract.
your exhibit A is the contract.
Exhibit A is in the contract. So it spells out and it takes out the library director, the board, it puts it in the language for you to
Maybe I
read.
didn't read that. Okay.
So yes, this is the procedure that the
That's,
board
that's,
would have
that's
to
not
follow.
compatible with the board. The board can't go.
You
That
can't
is-
do an oral warning. You can't do a personnel improvement. You can't do a reprimand. You can't do a suspension of pay. I mean, I don't think you could probably do a demotion. That is true, but a termination or dismissal, the board can do all of these probably except for one.
I think
That's what the evaluation is. It's a performance behavior improvement plan.
No,
I think maybe we should just finish
Yeah,
a policy of some sort. And it goes to legal counsel, and legal counsel can say, this conflicts with the contract, you can't do that,
Yeah.
okay? Then we'll go back and find a new rock and start over again. I think it,
yeah.
because we've gone this far into it, why do I? Either it applies or the personnel manual either applies or does not apply. If it doesn't apply, then we can do this. If it does apply, then we probably have to go back and
Yeah, it would have
and
to change this.
revise the personnel manual.
I didn't bother legal counsel until we got further ahead.
Well, normally we wouldn't, so I
Yeah.
think that we should say, legal counsel, here is our final product. And upfront say, and it may or may not conflict with the contract in combination with the existing personnel manual. Tell us the answer. I don't think we should say. I'm not asking legal
Well-
counsel to finish our policy. I think we should say, here is our policy as far as we know. If it conflicts or it's something, or is that the risk area, then tell us. And if it's wrong and we're told everything in the personnel manual applies to the library director, and then we have to revisit that and look at this. And
Yeah,
probably then
that'll-
change the personnel manual.
But basically, all this is
That-
saying is we're.
So I think that we should do it first right now is say, yeah, it doesn't have anything in here about what we on probation or whatever else we were talking about there.
You know,
So fine. I don't, at this point, because we don't know the answer about how this applies, we go ahead and deliver our best product.
basically. all
We're not very far from the end of it
Yeah,
anyway, so
basically, all this is if we have a problem come up,
Yes.
We don't have to wait until this, you don't have to wait until the 12-month evaluation to do something about
Oh, I
it.
agree. If we have,
You can basically start the process and do another evaluation, give feedback and get the correction going. And if this is not the right way to do it, then, I didn't think this applied.
So where are we here? The form? Is that where we were? I don't know.
The top of the page.
On the next page, I'm sorry.
Well, the valuation schedule, we never actually talked about, but, that's where this whole performance probation thing came up with in the evaluation form. I would just leave it in for now until we talk about it.
The newly hired.
So in the evaluation schedule, if the director receives an unsatisfactory evaluation, the director, and again, this is only if the very bottom thing is checked and the board agrees on it. It kicks off this automatic process where the probation happens and then every 2 months until you get say 3, but maybe that's unreasonable, but until you get some or the library director gets satisfactory performance, it's this probation or every 2 months, there's a review.
I'd rather say may and leave. I'd rather say may instead of will. I think it leaves the board
Where's that?
discretion. Oh, I'm sorry. If the director receives an unsatisfactory evaluation, the director is automatically.
No, because then if you go may, then we have to vote on it. I don't think we want to be voting on it. We want it to be some kind of automatic thing that we don't have to vote on. The only time that I was going to say we vote on it is if something happens in midstream, that's the last paragraph of the page, then the board may vote by majority vote to place director on performance probation. That's a may. But by saying will up above, it's automatic. We don't vote on it. We can
So
discuss that.
I think, obviously a long-term employee would be proficient in all of these areas, but I don't think it's fair or likely that a new employee could receive mastery in all of those areas at one time, and there's no statement to that effect. Do you know what I'm saying?
This is not grading all the areas. This is just overall.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I don't think, we do evaluations of people. So again, before their annual review, they must master all areas before, is what you're saying, because you're
No,
document, that is what you're saying. You're documenting what their performance has been. And
No,
you're
this
expecting,
just meets acceptable level of performance. And it's
so
checked
someone
out.
in, again, the
That's not
learning
mastery.
phase, it needs to have some aspect about this rating being related to mastery and having been there.
Doesn't
So
say mastery.
now, well, you're
somebody
not
could be on.
calling it a probation. You're now implying that it's disciplinary, even though it's not a disciplinary measure that's been outlined in the employment contract or in the personnel manual.
Its minimum level of acceptance level it does not meet minimum acceptance level. This would be in the judgment of the
And you're,
majority.
again, expecting someone that hasn't been here and isn't seasoned to come in. Again, this evaluation policy needs to be related to not just one person. It is the institutional policy. And so you're talking about an employee that has not been here for a year and you're expecting mastery, which is an unrealistic expectation.
Mastery doesn't.
I think you said it's a rating at the end that is not,
Didn't say anything about mastery. Mastery to me would be exceptional or excellent.
well, and again, the form that was listed before, this one does have mastery.
Yeah,
Overall rating. at the top
there are
of it.
different,
So,
I use those when I put
Yeah.
those scales
Yeah,
out.
I didn't.
I'll call it a scale.
One.
Yeah,
When I put this out, they're all different
Yeah, there was
evaluations I looked at of different ways to
I've got basically.
categorize.
4, I think is what I put in there.
so it seems to me like there should be a modified evaluation. If there's going to be a modified evaluation category, it should not be applicable to new employees.
I think that would be taken into consideration. This would be,
I don't know,
It's
this
a-
mastery discussion's coming.
I don't know, because it was on this other forum.
Is
I
it?
mean, this would only happen if there
Oh,
was,
yeah, now, yeah.
if there was a total fraud that came in that had, fooled the board and they hired the library director or something. It should be obvious to the board.
So
It puts
the
this in there.
employment contract talks about, if you violate any law, local, federal, state. I mean, those are grounds for immediate termination. So I don't understand how that applies to a probation period. I'm just saying that when you have new employees and they have not, so you're saying that, the reason why I would interpret that I was exempted from a 90-day is my job is difficult and complex. And to determine whether or not, in 90 days is probably unrealistic.
So if they're 9 months, versus
9 months is
determine
still
whether they're doing
unrealistic.
satisfactory
The
or not.
procedure is
basically.
written annually for all staff. So you're gonna have to have a burden to prove that there's some reason. I'm just putting that out as information to you. You're gonna have to prove that there's a reason why I should be treated differently than everyone else.
Yeah. Well, the original draft had something in it about it, and I added a little more structure to it of what I was trying to do with my edits here, and maybe legal may say this is, you
It
can't do that.
If everything's gonna revolve around this page 8, it's gonna be almost impossible unless you get the most reckless library director in the entire world. If you're going for an overall average to come up with an unacceptable, how would the person have failed anybody, not our current director, any director, in whatever we talk here?
Those, all those,
Each one of these categories, they failed in this, they didn't, they didn't manage place, they didn't do the finances correctly, didn't do personnel management. It'd be
well,
almost impossible for anybody, unless they just didn't show up for work at all, to get it unacceptable. So that certainly shouldn't be a threat. Meaning it's not even a realistic expectation, I would think. Now, maybe you would say if 3 people on the board, or a majority on the board, found a particular area unacceptable, that's the right, I don't know what scale we're gonna use there, then maybe that would be probation worthy, maybe, because,
that's what I'm.
but not,
It's
but
not
this
a
one's saying this is your overall performance evaluation, all wrapped up into one number. There's no way you're gonna add, no matter who does the evaluation, if you're looking at the overall average of all these categories and then saying this person is exceptional, very good,
No,
and there's no, and it's,
that's lacking in the policy, is how you average it all out.
I would just say that, like I said, I think if there's an area that the board is concerned, then talking about a performance improvement plan really is the most appropriate action and conversation about that. I don't know that you start this evaluative process. It usually starts with these are the expectations, these are the goals, right? These are.
What do you do 3 months since the last evaluation if something's gone really south?
So
You're
that's
not gonna wait.
discipline. And again, if it's violation, let's say, God forbid, money, there was some, like you were saying, financial policy violation, like
Mhm.
personal use of the credit card or something like that, which I've seen directors do. So, one time that could be disciplinary.
But how
2
does the board
times
discipline?
that can, so like anything else, there's a written discipline and it goes in your personnel policy. And then when you do the annual evaluation, that is reflected in writing in the evaluation. If it was more than that, let's say that there was something even more severe, then that would be termination, and that would follow the other things that are outlined in the employment contract and the procedures in that appendix that I mentioned. So minor things are disciplinary action. If there tends to be something that's like you're not getting this. You're really not getting this. This is what we want. Then that's more of the like, we're going to help you. We're going to talk about it. This is a performance improvement plan. We want to see, stop not doing that part of your job or start doing this part or paying more attention. Those types of feedbacks are an improvement.
But that's, you have to wait for the year to come up to do the evaluation. And do
I
that.
mean, the aspect is that the contract says from time to time. And so if it's mutually agreed upon, I think that's just fine. And I think if there's a need to, but I don't know why, like I said, usually an evaluation is reviewing the time that you've worked, the past, how things have gone. So I don't know why you need to have so many evaluations. Like I said, usually what you see is that there is and like I said, we have a contract element too. So I'm not seeing why the board wants to have so many evaluations, other than the fact that they're going to be difficult to do and they're a lot of work.
Yeah, a lot of work, right?
The reality is the board is just going to not renew a contract, and that's fine. That is perfectly fine. Do you know what I'm saying? There doesn't need to even be documentation, like 10 evaluations in a 2-year period. So I don't
The
know.
evaluations were, in my mind, were the way to give feedback or to document and give feedback what the board is doing wrong.
Okay, I will say because I'm the one that prepared that draft. I took too big of a leap, probably going from typical everyday business to performance probation. Whatever I've seen ever in personnel it's usually incremental. Verbal counsel discussions, maybe some jotted note, then something a little more threatening. It's usually escalates. Okay, that's the personnel manual. So
But I
that
thought
element may be missing in here, because I wouldn't say, oh, the library director is doing a poor job. Boom, you're on probation instantly. So it's in the graduation scale, it's not there, meaning in our draft policy. And so I do think that it should, if we're not required to be applying the personnel manual, we can steal from that. I'm good at plagiarizing things and taking some elements out of there to say, okay, if the performance is questionable, or there are issues, there's verbal discussion done privately, whether it's an executive session or by the chair, whatever we work it out. And it should be incremental. You don't leap from going, the person's an average, regular, everyday employee to suddenly you're on probation. It's never goes. Unless, again, somebody was caught stealing stuff or some disastrous thing. Well, then guess what? You're fired.
This is a board, not a supervisor trying to do it. The supervisor can follow those things.
Well, the board is the supervisor.
I know, but it's difficult for the board to go through this. Because
That's-
nothing happens without us as a whole agreeing. So,
No.
That's fair, though. I mean, to be honest, that's fair.
I agree.
I mean, that's what the employment agreement outlined. That's what was negotiated ahead of time. Fair treatment for all parties.
I'm just looking for a way for the board to speak and document what's going on. And the evaluation seems to be a way we all can get input and decide and give feedback to the director. So
So,
if something happened, it's just something we just start instead of waiting until the 12-month time.
right, like a oral warning, written warning, things like that.
Yeah, there's no reason why the board can't do that in the same way a director or a manager does that for their staff or their employees. But
That's pretty tough for a board to do.
it's also pretty tough for the board to do a new evaluation every 2 months. That's a lot of work.
Well,
It's a lot. I hate performance evaluation.
That's why I was
It was
trying.
one of my most hated things I ever had to do in my whole career, 30, 40 years worth.
You made it.
They
more
kill
difficult.
time, and I'm very careful, but I write. It's gotta be factual. It can't just be an opinion or an attitude. No, it's gotta be behavior based. This is what took place, and this is what they did about it, and this is the outcome, kind of a thing.
That's
I
why
think
I was trying to
so.
make it simple for the board. Basically, the board as a group just does this page 8 The rest of the comments are just comments from board.
I would say, why we waste time, right? Is that this is the eval at one page?
That's the overall evaluation, yeah.
Well, the director would never get an exceptional nor an unacceptable because there's no way 5 people are gonna come up with the same answer, probably, I don't know.
Well, it's a majority.
Unlikely.
I don't know whether you need 5 to do it.
So I would just say
Because it
that,
is-
since we kind of talked about like, how do you communicate what is going on? So that really is executive session. That really is like, from our perspective, we saw this and we're concerned, so we wanted to have a conversation with you about it. One of the aspects that's very difficult about my job with employment and public records and all these other sort of, I'm going to call it confidential camps that I have to keep separate. Boards often don't know the full story. They may just hear one part, and I may be able to share that, or I may not be able to share that, right? And so it's really a conversation. The conversation first, and then if what I'm saying doesn't satisfy you, then it's a documentation, if that makes sense. Do you know what I'm saying? So there needs to be more communication on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, one of the categories, okay,
Can't get into executive session.
Well, we did 2 months ago,
I know.
so we did.
I was gonna add into the scale. Yeah, we're not on the form, but exceeds expectations, meets expectations, needs improvement, unsatisfactory and unobserved. There will be many things that I don't know if your people hate you and you do a terrible job, or you're the best thing that ever showed up on their doorstep. So, and there are gonna be many cases of that when we go through this form.
That shouldn't
We're not in.
That shouldn't be a new call. It might be something here
I'm saying in the form.
in the individual ones, but
Well,
I
maybe
mean,
even once it's
basically-
all said and done, that either, anyway, I don't know.
but all this is just, is okay and acceptable.
So we've gotten how far in our policy?
I know, it's getting late too.
Yes,
So, I mean, I can type up what we have. I would just say overall, I think the only thing that I'm really concerned about is that, well, is about, the goals. You know, it really is the heart of an evaluation, and yet it comes across as very secondary. And so, and again, it seems because the board hasn't quite gelled into one vision yet, that it feels like the expectation is to make everybody happy, which will make no one happy, right? Like, it feels like there's not, that in 9 months, which is really just 2 more months, I don't know if we're gonna get there with like me leaving an evaluation feeling like that was enough from the board, from my perspective.
You're asking for us to do this page together now before the evaluation, so you have something? I mean, it says objectives and development. They could say objective and goals or something, but you're looking for us to meet with you and go through and
No, what I'm saying is that I need to know what the board needs to do in the next year. And we were not able to complete a calendar. And we were not able to agree on a facility master plan and things like that, that are, so I could spend all of my time fixing your policies. You have like 10 policies that are probably going to need to be evaluated in the next year. I could be a policy, you know, dynamo and just focus on policy. So all your paperwork is on target. Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
Well,
is
yeah.
that what you want?
No,
Or do you want, like I said, there's a lot of shifting budgetary needs. And so there's some documents like job descriptions that are very out of date. And there's some stuff that was recommended from that compensation study. I personally would like to fully implement the recommendations of the compensation study. So I would prioritize some policies and some restructuring and recommendations for myself in the next year, as like an example of a goal. There's also this big elephant of facilities. The board has not told me they want this, they want this, they want this. There's way too much work for me to do, which means I will do all of it poorly if I try to do it all. So I need specific measurable things that the board as a whole wants to move forward that I can act on. And then that is what I should be evaluated on. So it feels more of like there's this feedback that needs to happen that, okay, well, but there's other mechanisms to do that. And it feels like it's being driven through this policy. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and this evaluation.
Maybe I went off of what was on the rough, or the original draft, and I embellished it more, but I thought this didn't apply to you. And so maybe we need to look at that again, but I guess at this point, yeah, type it up, or I can give you the things I've made notes on.
Well, she's already doing that fault.
But, if we have time on the board agenda, we can say this is how far we got and do a summary. I don't know that we need to spend time.
I don't know if it's on the agenda or not. Yeah.
Is,
Yeah,
Okay.
well, maybe we'll just make it a summary. This is where we're at, but
so
maybe
there's
it does need to go to.
there's a committee report on the agenda, and then there's this policy with the action item
Okay.
attached to it. And I would say the other part is that I know that we're worried about cost and efficiency, but we can talk to legal counsel before we go down paths to find out clarification.
So at this point, I think I do.
So, I agree, and just so you know, I already sent this to him a month ago, saying like, what is going on here? So again, I prefer to keep him posted. If I'm gonna say something publicly or ask him a question, I would prefer, and I try to send him my thoughts in advance.
I've intentionally not spoken with legal counsel for months and months, mostly because I don't want to bring the clock up and the meter and charge, and I haven't had any critical things. I think the biggest question is, how does the contract work in relation to the personnel manual? Forget about the details of this policy. I think that needs to be answered. And if you're willing to give them a holler, I think that's the biggest hurdle to cross before we proceed. I mean, honestly, we shouldn't keep going. I mean, now, today, but I think we should keep working on it, but we need to find out.
That's what I want to
Do
find.
we do amend the personnel manual to accommodate the library director, or can we have a separate evaluation? We're not treating anybody differently as a board because we have one employee. If we rated other people in the organization, I'd say then that might be an issue.
I thought,
And
basically, I thought the personnel policy only was going to apply if the 2-year contract was not renewed.
So I think the board should be thinking more in terms of like, changes can be made and agreements can be made between us. They just have to be mutually agreed.
Yeah.
So I think that's what you're gonna hear counsel say. If a contract doesn't specify it specifically, then it gives us an opportunity to discuss and mutually agree. It's more of this imposing, right, with a policy that's probably gonna be more problematic.
Well, I do think that it would be unfair to you if we don't have clearly defined goals at some point, because you need to know what we want. And so it's probably easy right now. I'm not saying easy, but using this form, okay, organizational leadership. So, but if somewhere says they're carrying out the goals of the organization, or somewhere in the contract or the job description, it does say, your job is to execute the strategic plan. And if we don't like the strategic plan and you're still pressing forward going, oh, you created 10 new programs and we don't like programs, well, we can't hold that against you. That wouldn't be fair. So I'm not sure what comes first, but
Yeah.
if our strategic plan, and I know that generally is the overarching monster, like, okay, here's our vision statement, here's our strategic plan where we want to go. And that is I guess, your biggest marching order, so to speak. But absent that, it doesn't mean we can't do a performance evaluation, but it's certainly got to have some leeway in there, because
Well, the strategic plan
agree.
isn't listed in our evaluation form.
But if you look at the
Right.
recommendations of the Commission for Libraries, it's heavily based on that. And that is in library field, that is our document that we work towards. And you may not have seen it, but within the work that Amy did, there are step-by-steps, quarter-by-quarter goals that they are trying to achieve. And I've had to put that aside since the board's comments about it. And a lot of the board's decisions for the budget were in conflict with that.
I know.
That goals, which is fine, but again, that's part of why it was put aside. And so I either need to know what things the board wants to do, and just these things are put aside and vote on that. The other real concern that I have, and that's part of this discussion, is that the staff and the board has been sprinting for 6 months. The number of meetings that we've had, the number of policies that we're reviewing, the changes, the pace of changes, guys, honest feedback, we can't maintain this. This isn't sustainable.
Except
And
that a lot of that was the budget. And when we started in June, we were told you're behind already on the budget. And I thought I was told by other trustees that last year we had 10 meetings or 8 meetings or something to do this. I thought it was expected that it was going to take us that long with the budget. And that's where most of the meetings were.
I'll just be honest. So your next meeting next week, you have the personnel policy on there to review holidays. You have the policy on patron comment because of the signs and the other things with the meetings. You have a material selection, you have a material withdrawal, and you have the director evaluation. I kind of said one policy a meeting is like, you have 5 or 6 policies on your meeting.
Well, we need to have more meetings apparently, but
You need to prioritize.
2 meetings a month is not enough to get
One
us.
meeting is the standard.
That's standard, but it's under our conditions.
But
with
that's
what
what
we
I'm
want
saying.
to do. We need to have more meetings, and we did slow down. But a lot of those meetings were because of the budget, is what I was saying.
So, but my focus back to is that you have goals and the workload that having that number of meetings and having that many policy discussions and the preparation and the research and the impact on staff, that's fine, but you're essentially saying that that's what you want me to do. So then the list of things that I'm not going to be able to do is real. And I want to make sure that that's understood and been articulated in fairness to everybody. There,
We should, I agree. Yeah.
so, but what I'm saying is that this is too much, 6
I want to
months.
change the strategic plans. I want to change a number of policies. I want to,
At the next meeting?
it takes.
So how many
And having the
years?
committee, it was hopeful that we can take it offline and just bring these things and go faster, but maybe that's not realistic either, but.
So I want to say last year, the board did the strategic plan and hired a new director. There you go. That's a realistic list of what a board can do in a year. And so I'm just trying to apply a little bit of realism to this energy, which is great. Just tell me what's number 1, tell me what's number 2. We'll pace it and get it done as fast as we can. But the strategic plan, the facility plan, 10 policies, I mean, that's not realistic. And so that's part of that conversation too about goals, that how am I going to be successful? How do I have any reasonable chance to be successful?
I don't think anyone's gonna make judgments on not following strategic plan, but I would like to have worked on that. It's lower priority right now, but I think we do need to give you a clear message that that's not what you should be working on, if that's what the board thinks. The board needs to probably meet and do goals and objectives for you, is what I think. Here in this. Have some time to do that.
I would prioritize that over the first evaluation at 9 months. I would make the recommendation and figure out what we're gonna do the evaluation at 12 months and figure out and prioritize some of the board direction first. It seems more fair to
It
me.
does, yeah.
And then if you want to do an evaluation at 9 months, so at a year and then at 9 months, that makes sense.
Say that last part again?
Next year's evaluation, doing it at 9 months instead of a year because of the contract renewal. That seems fair. That can be mutually agreed. That seems fair.
So stretch the first one to a year?
Well, because you have goals for me to
I understand.
accomplish.
Thing is, we're going into other areas that, speaking for the board, that we're just supposed to talk about the policy. But yeah, it's giving me ideas to.
I think the part is that the whole evaluation process is ongoing. It's a lot of conversation. It's a lot of mutual needs being met.
Well, I certainly don't want to open up too many new policies.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well,
Yeah,
I'm a
we-
little
we-
worried about
We have a few I'd like to finish out and consider them done.
evaluations every 2 months. Add that in, right? Like,
Well, it was supposed, my idea was simple. Bring all the comments together and do it overall.
But they're not simple.
Yeah. I was trying to.
it's one of, I think it is the hardest thing that the board does. That and budget related decisions, I think are the two harder things. Just to be real.
Because
Right.
Okay,
the budget wasn't done.
Done
so
today.
go ahead and we put down as much as we've got done and we'll give a report. And in the meantime, I think we need to go to legal counsel and
Yeah, we can find out.
tell me to do that.
Yeah, is there a reason why we can't have a separate policy for the director
And,
as opposed to whatever's contained in the personnel manual? And mostly it is because of fairness. But we have one employee, we don't have personally other employees, so whether that applies or not, I couldn't say, I'm not qualified to say that.
Okay.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you, I'm meeting adjourned. Wait, is there a motion for that? No.
We're done.